أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين، ثم الصلاة والسلام على خير خلقه العبد المؤيد والرسول المسدد، حبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد
وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين وصحابته المنتجبين. صلى الله عليك يا رسول الله، صلى الله عليك يا سيدي ويا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله، يا رحمة الله الواسعة ويا باب نجاة الأمة ويا عبرة كل مؤمن ومؤمنة، يا ليتنا كنا معكم سادتي فنفوز فوزا عظيما. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل للمؤمنات يغضضن أبصارهن ويحفظن فروجهن ولا يبدين زينتهن إلا ما ظهر منها وليضربن بخمرهن على جيوبهن ولا يبدين زينتهن إلا لبعولتهن. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
Second, for the love of Fatima al-Zahra.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
A third, for the love of Rasulullah with your loudest voices.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم.
Is hijab actually wajib and mandatory in Islam? Who said that a woman has to veil herself, veil her head and neck, and entire body should be covered? Where do we have proof that says this? Who says that hijab is not actually something cultural that exists in our countries and part of our culture? Who said that hijab is not a way for men to dominate over women and to control them, to control their movements, and to make sure that their women are not seen? Perhaps hijab is a way for men to show their pride and ego and protect their possession, because women are their possession. Who says that Islam actually encourages hijab and teaches hijab? Where in the Quran does it say that hijab is wajib? Isn't hijab our #1 source of Islamic law? Don't we believe that hijab is our constitution and the book that we follow? Where does it say in the Quran that women should cover themselves and wear a veil? Why is it that we depend on 1 or 2 or 3 weak narrations that are not so authentic to try to prove that hijab is mandatory? If hijab is mandatory, it should exist in the Quran itself. Show me. These are some questions that have been asked and are being asked in Islamic circles. You see, previously, hijab was under attack by Westerners, by non-Muslims, those who had no clue what hijab is about and what hijab means. Hijab was always attacked. That hijab is a way for Muslim men to oppress Muslim women, to control them, to make them second-class citizens, and so on and so forth. But today we see that the attacks are not just coming from non-Muslims and Westerners. Some attacks against hijab are coming from within the Islamic communities, from our sisters, from our daughters, from our own women. They're coming out and saying, who says that hijab is wajib? Who said that it's religious? Perhaps it's just cultural. In fact, there are some men, not women. So when a woman questions hijab, I can understand why. But I don't understand why when a man questions hijab. There are some men that are coming out and saying that where does it say in the Quran that hijab is wajib? Prove to me, give me proof. Tonight, my dear friends, first of all, sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Tonight, our lecture and discussion will revolve around hijab, and we'd like to examine it and address it from various angles, from different angles. Number 1, how are women viewed in the West? We live in the West. How does the West view women? Women in general, not Muslim women, but women in general. How are they viewed in the West? How much respect are they given? And how much equality are they given? Number 2, why did Islam say that hijab is mandatory for women? What is the reason? What is the philosophy? What are the purposes and reasons why Islam made hijab mandatory upon women? Number 3, if Islam made hijab mandatory upon women, why didn't it make it mandatory upon whom? Men. Why don't men have to wear hijab? If there's equality, men should also wear hijab. Why not? Number 4, is everything in the Quran? Our ideology, our practices, our faith, is everything found in the Quran or not? We have to answer this question. And number 5, what does the Quran say about the hijab? Are there any traces of evidence? Is there any Quranic proof? Is there any Quranic basis for hijab or no? Number 6, the hijab of the East and the hijab of the West. There are some that believe the hijab of the East should be different from the hijab of the West. The hijab of the East is all covered. You don't see a single part of the woman. No skin, no face, no hands, nothing whatsoever. But in the West, hijab is supposed to be easygoing. A woman doesn't have to wear the same hijab that she wears back home when she's here in the Netherlands or in the UK or in the United States. Is this correct? Do we have 2 different hijabs? Number 7, fashion hijab. Hijab that is worn in a fashionable way. It's hijab. You see a scarf. You see a veil. You don't see any skin, but you see the shape, and you see the form, and you see that it's very fashionable. Is this hijab? Is this acceptable? Is this the hijab that Islam wants? Number 8, makeup. Does it have anything to do with hijab? Or can a woman wear a veil and cover her entire body, yet put on makeup? What does Islam say about this? Number 9, hijabis that don't implement their hijab. Hijabis that don't take their hijab seriously. Hijabis that wear hijab, yet their actions speak otherwise. They say otherwise. And number 10, the role of men, fathers, husbands, and brothers on the topic of hijab. Within the next couple of moments, in the next couple of minutes, inshallah, we'll talk about these points. وَصَلُّ عَلَى مُحَمَّد وَآلِ مُحَمَّد. When we look at the West, we see that the West claims that there is equality between men and women. That the West treats men and women exactly the same. They have the same exact rights, and they have the same exact responsibilities. Men are not given preference over women, and women are not oppressed. A man can become a doctor, a woman can become a doctor in the West. If a man can become a CEO, a very successful CEO of an important organization, so too can a woman. They say there's a complete equality. However, these are just slogans. These are just nice statements. When you look at the facts, when you look at reality, you see a totally different picture. Just up till 100 years ago in some countries, in the United States of America, which claims to be the most modernized, most up-to-date country of the world, up till 1920, women did not have the right to vote. Women could not vote. What equality is this? Up till 100 years ago, women did not have the right to own. She couldn't own a house. She couldn't own a land. What equality is this? Women could not even work in the West. When is it that women started working in the West? It was during the Social Revolution. When was the Social Revolution? In the 60s. Right after World War II. In World War II, millions of men died. There were lots of casualties. What happened? That means lots of factories, companies were empty of workers. There were no more men, so they needed whom? They needed women. So they brought women into the workforce. And they say, we gave them the right to work. They needed them. They needed workers. They needed labor. And when women entered the workforce, do you think that they were being paid the same amount that men were being paid? And they were working the same amount of hours that men were working? Of course not. Women were being exploited. They were working long hours with very little wage, with very little income. And they say that men and women are equal. Our women work. They're part of the workforce. The biggest proof that there is no equality between men and women in the West is the United States of America. Have you ever seen a president that is a female in the United States of America? The history of the United States is close to 300 years, more than 300 years, from 17-something. From the very first president to the last president, we've had 43 presidents, or 44, I don't know. None of them have been women. None of them have been female. What equality is this? And they speak about equality, and they condemn Islam. And they say that it is Islam that disrespects women and doesn't give women their rights. When we come to the West, we see that women are valued based on their looks, based on their beauty, based on her hair and what she's wearing. Is she up to date with fashion, or is she not up to date with fashion? Does she go and do her hair and her nails, or no? How many surgeries has she had? Women are valued upon their looks. The better looking she is, the more she's valued. If she doesn't look good, she's not valued whatsoever. And this is the reality. Proof of this, look at jobs. Look at jobs. I assure you, the better looking a woman is, the more chance she has of getting a job. Not because of her education, not because of her degree, not because she graduated from a certain university. The real reality, the actual reality is the way she looks. The better she looks, the more chance she has of getting a job. Look at news. The news on TV. Have you ever seen an ugly reporter on TV? Or someone that doesn't look good? Or someone that's very overweight? No. They bring the best looking news reporters. Why? This is just news. You want to learn about politics. You want to hear about politics. What's happening in the US, in Europe, in the Middle East. That's all you want. But they bring someone good looking. Why? Because it will bring more viewers. It will bring more viewers. Hence, you see that woman's beauty is exploited only to bring more viewers. They only care for more viewership. Perhaps there's another lady who's more qualified. She's a better journalist. Her journalistic abilities is better, but her looks aren't that great. She won't get the job. Is this equality? Is this fairness? Look at movies. Movies of Hollywood. How do they portray women? How are women portrayed? In a nice way? In a respectful way? They're degraded. They degrade their own women. They portray them in the most promiscuous ways. Their clothing, their behavior, their actions, only to attract viewers. Only to attract viewers. Recently, I read that the famous American celebrity Kim Kardashian was paid $43 million to show, you know the rest. $43 million. When I first read it, I thought maybe it's made out of gold. Maybe her body's made out of gold or silver. Otherwise, to portray her body and be paid $43 million. For what? What does this tell you about Western culture and Western society? Show yourself, and here's a fat check of $43 million. This is the West. This is how they sell women. This is how much respect they have for women. In fact, look at TV commercials. To sell the smallest merchandise, they have to portray a beautiful woman making an advertisement. Even if it's a shampoo bottle, or lotion, even a car, even restaurants, clothing, whatever it is, they have to associate it with a beautiful woman that comes and is dressed nicely to sell and market a merchandise. This shows you how much respect they have for women. In fact, in the West, there are some companies and some industries that are making billions of dollars by selling this idea that a woman is valued according to her looks. If she doesn't look good, she's not valued. The better she looks, the more she's valued. And they're making billions of dollars. Look at the industry of cosmetic surgery. Do you know how much they make money from cosmetic surgery and plastic surgery? Or makeup accessories, hair salons, pedicures, doing your nails. These are billions of dollars. These are industries that make billions of dollars off of women. Because they give a message to women that you have no value. If you don't look good, if your hair isn't nice, if you're not dressed fashionably, you won't get respect. You're not valued. More proof. And this doesn't just occur in Western society. Even in our societies. Even those of us that have lived in the West, unfortunately, we've picked up these values. These bad values. You see a young woman on her graduation day. She posts a picture on Facebook or Instagram of her graduation. She's in her graduation gown. Right? She has her bachelor's degree, or her master's degree, or her PhD. What do her friends comment? You look so beautiful. They don't say congratulations on your PhD, on your master's, on your bachelor's. You look so beautiful in that gown. Instead of looking at her achievements, her degree. They value her according to her looks. In the West, there's a Miss Beauty pageant, or a Miss Universe, or a Miss America, which is something so degrading to women. Yet you see millions of people that follow up, and they view the show, they follow up. And the whole objective is to value these women according to their what? Their IQ, their political answers, their political ideology, their degrees? Of course not. According to how good she looks in a bathing suit, or how good she looks generally. This is how it is. This is what happens in the West. And they claim that there's equality, that men and women are equal in the West. Men and women have the exact opportunities, and they're expected equally. We all know that this is just a slogan. We all know that this is all theoretical. Practically, it's a complete different story. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. When we come to Islam, Islam says to women, wear your hijab. Because hijab is respect. Hijab is honor. Hijab means that you value a woman not according to her looks, not according to what she's wearing, but according to what she does, according to how she contributes, according to her achievements, not according to her looks. Islam says that you have to respect women. Women are to be respected the same way that men are respected, not anything less. Because women are also humans, and you will treat them as humans. You will not treat them as toys, or objects of pleasure, or objects of desire. Women will not be exploited. This is what Islam says. Islam gives this message. It is that women are to be respected and be treated as human beings that accomplish and achieve, and to be valued as such, not based on their looks. Yes, Islam doesn't tell women to wear rags. Islam tells women, dress nicely, dress presentably, but don't make yourself cheap. Don't sell yourself. Your self-value does not come from what you wear and what you dress, but rather from what you achieve, your degree, your work, how much you give back to society. That is what you should be valued on and respected according to. You see, my dear friends, Islam tells women that respect yourself and the entire world will respect you. But degrade yourself, dress cheaply, dress in a provocative way. If you don't respect yourself, no one else will respect you. This is a law. This is a law for everyone, whether it's men or women. If I respect myself, I will force everyone to respect me. If I have absolutely no respect for myself, how can I expect others to respect me? How? That's impossible. Islam tells women, respect yourself, dress nicely, cover yourself, cover your head, cover your body. Don't let men stare at you. Don't let men exploit you. Don't let men take advantage of you, and you will gain respect. As long as you respect yourself, people will respect you. But if you degrade yourself, if you have no respect for yourself, don't respect from others. When a woman wears hijab, she's giving a message to the entire world that I demand respect from you, not based on my looks, but based on my degree, on my achievements, on what I do. Don't stare at me. When a woman wears a hijab, she's giving a message, don't stare at me. Don't judge me based on my looks. I'm not here to entertain you and entertain your eyes and to entertain your desires. I'm a human being with achievements. But when a woman does not take her hijab seriously, when she's half naked, when she's showing everything, she's giving a message to others that I have no respect for myself. And you don't need to respect me as well. You could look at me as much as you want, and you could judge me according to my looks, not according to my achievements. Because I want you to look at me. I want you to stare at me. This is a message. This is a message that some women that have absolutely no respect for hijab and dress provocatively, this is a message that they give. The message that they give is, stare at me. I want you to look at me. I want your attention. I want you to judge me based on my looks and nothing else. So what sort of message do you want to give? Do you want to give a message for people to respect you based on your achievements? Based on who you are? Or based on what you look like? And based on what you dress like? Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Some say that hijab is restricting. Hijab restricts women. When a woman wears hijab, full hijab, she covers her head and her neck and her body and her respectful. She's restricted. She can't work. She can't study. She should just sit at home and become a mother, become a housewife, and raise children. That's the only thing that she could do. This is not correct. Hijab does not limit women whatsoever. Women in hijab could study. They could go to work. They could go to university. They could go to the mall. They could go shopping. They could drive. They could vote. They could own. They could do anything that a Western woman could do. Is there something that a Western woman can do that you can't do? Yes. Go swimming at the beach. That's the only difference. But that's the whole point. That's all. We're trying to convince you not to go swimming at the beach. That's the only difference. Hijab is not restricting. Yes, hijab does restrict. You know who it restricts? It restricts the men that want to look at you. It restricts the men that want to be entertained by what you dress, by what you look like, and what you dress like. It restricts the men that want to abuse you and take advantage of you. If hijab is restricting, it restricts men. It doesn't restrict women. It has absolutely no restrictions on women. My dear friends, hijab is a symbol of Islam. Do you know this or you don't? Many women, when they put on their hijab, they just put on their hijab and they leave the house. They don't realize how important this hijab is. This hijab represents Islam. You see the difference between Muslim men and Muslim women. You know what the difference is? Many Muslim men, they'll go out on the street. Does everyone know that they're Muslim? No. Not everyone knows. Unless you're like me, you wear a turban and you have a beard and you're dressed like this, people will immediately know that you're a Muslim. But if you're not dressed, Muslim men, they don't have something specific about them. They could fit in with the Western world. But Muslim women, when they wear their hijab, that means they're saying, I'm a Muslim. I'm an ambassador of Islam. I'm a representative of this religion. Do you see how important your hijab is? What a big obligation it is. What a big responsibility it is. For Muslim women that wear hijab, their actions have two consequences, always. When they do a good deed, they get 2 points, not 1 point, 2 points. One, because they did a good deed for themselves. And one, because they gave a good image to whom? To Islam. People will say, look, these are Muslims. This is a Muslim person that respected the elderly, that abide by the law, that helped the poor, so on and so forth. Thus, when a Muslim woman does a good deed, she gets 2 points. Muslim men get 1 point. I'm sorry, brothers. This is the reality. Why? Because Muslim women, their action goes back to them and to their religion. However, when you do a bad deed, you also get 2 bad points. 2 bad points. One, because you did a bad deed, and one, because you gave a bad image to Islam. They'll say, look, this is a Muslim woman racing on the street, speeding, not abiding by traffic laws, not abiding by laws in general. I'll go back to your faith and religion. Thus it goes 2 ways. You can either give a good image to Islam and be a good representative of Islam and get people to come to Islam, or you could get people to run away from Islam. It's up to you. It's up to how you want to portray Islam and represent Islam. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Now, some say If in Islam there's equality, women wear hijab, why don't men wear hijab? If you claim there's equality. In the West there's no equality. If in Islam there's equality between men and women, women have to wear hijab, why don't men have to wear hijab? If there's beautiful women, there's beautiful men. If some women have good hair, some men have even better hair, correct? Some men have also good hair. So why the difference? Why the difference? Why does Islam tell women that they have to cover up from head to toe, but men can wear whatever they want? Why? First of all, before I answer, let's understand something about men and women. Wa sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. There's a known fact about men and about women. And that fact, let's face it, that when it comes to sexual desires, men are less, what's the right word to say this? They have less control over those desires. Less control. Women on the other hand, have more control. When it comes to these certain desires, women have a lot more control. Maybe 10 times more control than men. This is reality. This is the truth. Psychologically, this is not coming from Muslim scholars, psychologists, that men have less resistance to those certain urges and desires. And men think about those desires a lot more than women do. I was reading some reports that men think about such desires maybe once every hour, while women maybe once a day. Something like that. So I don't know how accurate these statistics are, and of course it differs from men to women. But men think of those desires and have less control over those desires as compared to women. Women, first of all, they think less about those desires, and number two, they have more control. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given them more haya. Haya. A word that I've been trying to translate into English for the past 10 years, and I have not found the right word. Because I don't think there's the right word that defines the word haya in English. Honor, modesty, I don't know, maybe a mix of all of these words. Allah has given women haya, and I know all of you know what the word haya is. This is one. Number two, men, they judge, and they're not just judge. Men are affected by sight, by their eyesight. What they see has a major effect on them and on their desires. And this is also a fact. When a man sees something, even if it's without a bad intention, he might not have a bad intention, but sometimes one glance, one scene, one depiction can flip him up. It could mix his feelings. It could destroy him sometimes. It could leave him restless for several nights without sleep, just because of one view, one scene. Women are not like this. Yes, women are also attracted to sight. They are also attracted to a good view of a good-looking man, but not like men. But not like men. And to prove that men are a lot more sensitive when it comes to these desires that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put in us, men are a lot more sensitive and have less control. The Quran tells women, وَلَا تَخْضَعْنَ بِالْقَوْلِ فَيَطْمَعُ الَّذِي فِي قَلْبِهِ مَرَضٍ. And do not speak softly in front of men. Because some men, they'll become excited. They'll turn them on. Don't speak softly. Have you seen some woman? At home, she speaks like a bear. With her family, with her mother, she starts shouting. With her siblings. But in front of men, all of a sudden she has a tender voice, soft voice. Why? Why is it the other way around? Speak softly with your parents, but speak like a bear with men? Islam says, وَلَا تَخْضَعْنَ بِالْقَوْلِ. Don't speak softly. This is the Quran. This is not from me. وَلَا تَخْضَعْنَ بِالْقَوْلِ فَيَطْمَعُ الَّذِي فِي قَلْبِهِ مَرَضٍ. The one who has a disease in his heart, meaning the one who has no restrictions. The one who's starved. He'll what? He'll get turned on. In another verse, basically, if I don't have the exact verse, the verse says, and do not hit your foot on the ground. وَلَا يَضْرِبْنَ بِأَرْجُلِهِنَّ لِيُخْفِينَ مَا يُبْدِينَ مِنْ زِينَتِهِنَّ. And do not hit your foot on the ground so that men will know what you have. See, because previously, women would wear bracelets on their foot, on their ankle. On their ankle, they would wear bracelets. And these still exist today, but they're not so abundant. When a woman walks, the bracelet makes a sound, the man will know that she's wearing a bracelet. And this will turn him on. This will turn him on. This is how men are. This is how men are sensitive. Maybe some women don't realize this, but it happens. Of course, today, women don't make sounds with their bracelets, but they make sounds with their what? High heels. You think that doesn't have an effect? They walk with their high heels and they make noise that people from a kilometer could hear them. This also has an effect. Islam says walk modestly. Don't make sounds. Don't draw attention. Because men are sensitive. It will excite them. It will turn them on. This is proof that men are a lot more sensitive than women. Do you see why women have to cover and men don't need to cover? If a woman sees a man regularly, she will not become crazy. Or if a man speaks softly, she will not get so excited. There's a difference between men and women. We have to understand this. That psychologically, biologically, men and women are different. Men are attracted in a certain way, women are attracted in another way. For women, some women, you know what attracts them? Humor. The man could be not so good looking, but if he's funny, that's very attractive for some women. Maybe not the looks, but humor. You see, men and women are not the same when it comes to attraction, the law of attraction. It's very different. But does this mean that men could wear whatever they want? Of course not. Of course not. There is guidelines as well. Islam tells men that also dress modestly. Don't dress whatever you want. Don't dress whatever you want and you come out in the street and you show your entire body that you worked so hard at the gym. Now you want to come and show it off. No. No. Dress modestly. Islam also has rules regarding men, the same way that it has rules regarding women. But they don't have to cover their head. They don't have to cover their neck. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. I hear some sisters, some women, they say, well, why did Islam enforce hijab on women? Why, if men are so sensitive, why didn't Islam just tell men don't look? Men shouldn't look. Why do I have to restrict myself and wear a hijab and cover my head and cover my body and wear a certain hijab because men are sensitive? Who cares men are so sensitive? He should not look. He should not look. Just because he's sensitive, why should I restrict my freedom? The answer, Islam says, you see, both of you have a responsibility. Both of you have a responsibility. The woman has a responsibility of covering. Her responsibility is to cover her beauty. The man's responsibility is to not look. And yes, Islam tells men not to look. قُلْ لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ يَغُضُّوا مِنْ أَبْصَارِهِمْ. Tell the believers to look away, to lower their gaze, not to stare. Islam divides the responsibilities. Islam tells women to cover and tells men not to look. They both have a role in this. Men have a role and women have a role. Works both ways. It's not just, the responsibility is not just on the shoulder of women, but men could look as much as they want. No, men can't look as much as they want. And by the way, when the Quran tells men don't look, it also tells women not to look. Some sisters, they only remember this verse, that men can't look. Women can't look either. قُلْ لِلْمُؤْمِنَاتِ يَغْضُضْنَ مِنْ أَبْصَارِهِنْ. Women shouldn't look as well. Just because a man doesn't have to cover and wear a hijab, it doesn't mean that the woman could just sit and stare at him all day. No, she can't sit and stare. She also can't look. And let me tell you something. Let me tell my dear sisters something that they might not know. When a woman looks at another man, she's not just looking at him. You see, when a man looks at a woman, he's just trying to satisfy his eyes. But when a woman stares at another man, you know what she's doing? She's inviting him. Not intentionally. Don't get me wrong. She's not doing it intentionally. But when a woman looks at another man, she sees him, he's good looking. What does the man think? She wants me. She probably wants my number. Maybe I should go and give her my number. Am I right or am I wrong? This is the reality. Women don't know this. She thinks that, it's a simple glance. It's very innocent. But the man, he's thinking 2 years ahead. Just because she looked at him. That is why the Quran says, قُلْ لِلْمُؤْمِنَاتِ يَغْضُضْنَ مِنْ أَبْصَارِهِنْ. Tell women not to look as well. Not just men. صلوا على محمد وعلى محمد. Before we mention the evidence and proof of hijab in the Quran, we ask because there's a lot of people, wherever I go, in fact, many places where I go, people ask me, Sayyid, where is the proof of hijab in the Quran? Show me. First thing we have to ask, is everything in the Quran? Everything is in the Quran or no? Of course not. Not everything is in the Quran. The Quran has over 6,000 verses. But out of these 6,000 verses, only 480 of them talk about laws. Only 480 verses talk about laws. That's it. Do you know how many laws we have? How many ahkam we have? Thousands. We have thousands of laws. Thus, these 480 verses obviously don't talk about all of the laws of Islam. The Quran gives us the general guidelines, the general principles, the general rules. Islam gives us certain rules, and the rest is for whom? The rest is for whom to explain to us? Whom we're gathered to commemorate him? Whom? Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. Rasulullah teaches us. Rasulullah explains. Rasulullah gives the details. The details are not found in the Quran. Tell me, which part of the Quran says that Salatul Subh is 2 units? Where? Which part of the Quran says that Salatul Dhuhr is 4 units? Where? Where in the Quran does it give me all the details of Hajj and fasting and khums? No. The Quran gives me general guidelines. Aqim as-salah, pray. But how do you pray? When do you pray? All the details, the Quran says, go and refer to your Prophet. We have sent you a messenger. He will give you the details. You have to abide by him. من أطاع قل أطيعوا الله وأطيعوا الرسول. من أطاع الله فقد أطاع الرسول. ما آتاكم الرسول فخذوه وما نهاكم عنه فانتهوا. What Rasulullah gives you, take it. And what Rasulullah tells you not to do, don't do. He who obeys Rasulullah is obeying Allah. You see? That's not everything is in the Quran. There are some that have a philosophy, and this philosophy, you know where it came from? While Rasulullah was still alive. When a specific man, to the face of Rasulullah, he stated, Hasbuna kitab Allah. When Rasulullah wanted to write his will, what did that man say? All we need is the Quran. We don't need anything else. And we talked about this last year, if you remember. The calamity of Thursday. The tragedy of Thursday. This is a philosophy that some people have. That all we need is the Quran. No. Yes, we need the Quran, but we also need the Sunnah of Rasulullah. We need the Sunnah of Ahlul Bayt. The Quran by itself is incomplete. That is why Rasulullah says, I leave with you 2 things. Not 1 thing. 2 things. The book of Allah and my family. That's the Quran. Not everything is in the Quran. We need the help of Rasulullah and his Sunnah and his traditions to explain to us the Quran. Now when we come to the Quran, does the hijab exist? Does the Quran teach us about hijab? Yes, it does. Yes. There are some that say that hijab does not exist in the Quran. I tell you, no, it exists. The Quran explicitly teaches us about hijab. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Surah An-Nur, the Quran says, وَلَا يُبْدِينَ زِينَتَهُنَّ إِلَّا مَا ظَهَرَ مِنْهَا. And they shall not, they whom? Woman. And they shall not reveal their beauty unless it is already showing. They shall not reveal their beauty unless it is already showing. What does this verse mean? The Quran says, Zina, وَلَا يُبْدِينَ زِينَتَهُنَّ. They shall not reveal their beautification and beauty. Some say beautification and beauty here means jewelry. That means they shall not reveal their jewelry unless it is already apparent. Now, what jewelry are women not allowed to show? If a woman has a gold necklace, can she come and show it to people? Of course she can. That's not haram. A woman can show her jewelry. Outside of her body, she can show her jewelry. Thus, the verse is not talking about jewelry by itself, but jewelry that is worn. Or the places of jewelry. The places of jewelry. Where does a woman put on her jewelry? Her neck, her chest, her wrist, her ankles, her ears. These are the places of beautification and jewelry. Her neck, her chest, her ears, her wrists, her ankles. These are the places. And with the help of ahadith of Ahlul Bayt, the verse is trying to say that a woman needs to cover up her entire body, because her entire body is a form of beautification. For men consider a woman's body all beautification, except two parts. That which is already apparent. Which is already apparent? Her face and her hands. These two places are already apparent. Otherwise, the rest of the body has to be covered according to this verse. وَلَا يُبْدِينَ زِينَتَهُنَّ إِلَّا مَا ظَهَرَ مِنْهَا. Lest that which is already apparent, her face and her hands. Now, she doesn't reveal. What does it mean? Number one, she does not show skin. She doesn't show the skin of her body. Number two, she doesn't show the shape. This is also important. Some cover the skin, but they reveal the shape. And we shall talk about this in a couple of moments. The skin and the shape cannot be shown. This is one verse. Another, and it's in the same exact verse, but in another section. وَلِيَضْرِبْنَ بِخُمُرِهِنَّ عَلَى جِيُوبِهِنَّ. Khumur does not mean alcohol. That's khamr. Khumur means scarf, a headscarf. A headscarf. The verse mentions the word khumur, and it also mentions juyub. Juyub is the opening of the chest. You know, when you wear a shirt, it opens at the chest area, at the breast or chest area. That place is called juyub. The verse says, وَلِيَضْرِبْنَ بِخُمُرِهِنَّ عَلَى جُيُوبِهِنَّ. Let them cover with their khumur, with their headscarf, let them cover their what? Their chest. This opening, where the chest is open, because the shirt, it closes up to here, but this area is open. Let them cover their chest with their headscarf. This verse tells us that even before Islam, women would wear headscarves. Women would wear headscarves, even before Islam. However, they would put the headscarf behind their back. They would put on the headscarf and bring it back. The Quran says, no, don't bring it back, bring it front. Instead of putting it, and I've seen some places, in Afghanistan and other places, they put the headscarf behind their what? Behind their ears. Have you seen that? Before Islam, women would put it behind their ears and behind their back. Islam says no, bring it forward. Cover your neck and cover your chest. And of course, when the Quran says cover your head and neck and chest, does it need to mention the other part of the bodies? Does it need to mention the legs? Of course not, because that's logical. That's logical. Doesn't need to mention these places. Thus, the Quran is very precise. The Quran is very accurate, and it's enough. Those who want to make excuses, that's another issue. Some don't want to wear hijab, and they want to find a religious excuse. And that's what's upsetting. you don't want to wear hijab, that's up to you. Don't wear hijab. But don't come and tell me that the Quran does not implement Quran. Because that upsets me. And that upsets all religious people. If you don't want to wear hijab, that's up to you. No one will force you. But to come and tell me that the Quran does not promote hijab, no, this is not right. This is not correct. The Quran does promote hijab and does teach us about hijab. Salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Now, some of our sisters, some of our respected women and young ladies, or even the older ones, when they go back home, Iraq, Afghanistan, Iran, you see that their hijab is a bit different. And you can tell because obviously they post their pictures online. As soon as they land, it's a totally different hijab. The hijab there is, as they say, it's a head abaya. In Iraq they call it a head abaya, which covers the entire body except the face and the hands. But here in the West, it's a different hijab. It's a more relaxed, chilled out form of hijab. Now some young ladies, they say, yes, the hijab of the East should be different from the hijab of the West. We live in Europe. We live in America. We live in Canada. And here, you can't expect me to wear a head abaya. To wear a abaya that covers from head to toe. That's impossible. Because I go to university. I go to work. I interact with foreigners, with non-Muslims. And if I were to wear a head abaya, I will look weird. I will scare people. Especially today when there's Islamophobia. When there's people that are already scared of Islam. Why should I scare people even more? Thus, my hijab should be more relaxed. More chilled out. I don't need to wear a head abaya. My hijab could be different. The hijab of the East should be different from the hijab of the West. Not just that. But even the men of the East are different from the men of the West. The men of the East, they eat you with their eyes. They stare at you, they look at you, they even make comments. They make bad comments sometimes, men of the East, in Middle Eastern countries, but men in the West, no. No, they don't make comments. They don't stare at you. Why? Because they've seen so many women that are almost half naked, so why would they even look at a woman that's wearing hijab, correct? Because they're exposed to so much. But men in the East, they're starved. Because there's not so much exposure, they stare at you. Thus, this is why the hijab of the East should be different from the hijab of the West. Is this correct? Do you accept this? Salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
My dear friends, we have one Islam. We don't have an Islam for the East and an Islam for the West. Islam was revealed for everyone, for people of all countries and of all continents. We don't have an Islam for the East and an Islam for the West. We don't have a salah and fasting and khums for the East, but a different salah and fasting and khums for the West. Islam is not based upon geographical areas. Where do you live? You'll have a different law. No. Wherever you live, the laws are the same. Islam came for all times and all places. We can't differentiate and say here we have one law, one ruling, one hijab, but another country will have a different hijab, a different ruling. This is not correct. This is not correct. We have one Islam, one ruling, and one hijab. But yes, in the Middle East, there's something called culture. Some things are based upon culture. In some countries in the Middle East, if a woman does not wear a niqab, she does not wear, or in Iraq we call it a pushiyah, that covers her entire body, and she doesn't wear gloves, she'll be excommunicated. She'll be kicked out of the city. She'll be disowned by her family. Why? Because that's custom. That's culture. She'll be the black sheep in the society, in the community. Thus, because she doesn't want to stand out, she'll have to wear a niqab, she'll have to wear gloves. She'll have to cover from head to toe. She'll have to wear a head abaya, and so on and so forth. This is more based upon culture. You see, when we come to Islamic rulings, scholars tell us that this is hijab. Hijab is to cover your body. You cover your head, and your neck, and your hair, and your entire body except your face and your hands. Not all scholars say that you have to cover your face. Yes, there are some that do. For example, Ayatollah al-Khoi. Ayatollah al-Khoi was his opinion that women should cover their face as well. But today some scholars don't agree. Most scholars don't agree that you could show your face and hands. As long as you're not showing skin and shape, that's hijab. Whether it's in the east or in the west, it doesn't matter anymore. You see? That's why to say there's a hijab of the east and a hijab of the west, no, this is not real. This is not real. This is not accurate, and this is not Islamic. Hijab is one hijab. If you abide by hijab, you could wear it wherever you'd like, as long as you stick by the book and you wear the actual hijab. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Today, my dear friends, we see women that wear hijab. But it's a fashion hijab. It's a fashionable hijab. It's called hijab, but it reveals, it shows. You see her wearing a scarf, and she's covering her body, but it's with various colors, various shapes, and it shows the shape of the body. Very tight clothing, tight tops, tight jeans. Yes, there's no skin. There's no skin that shows, but the entire body's showing. It reveals the shape of the body. It reveals the size. It's called a hijab. It's called a hijab, but it reveals everything. It reveals everything. And you see, and this is from my experience of traveling in the Western world, you will see some of our sisters, some of our women, when they come to the mosque, they have special attire. They have special clothing for their mosque. But when they go to university, to work, to the mall, they go on vacation, they have other clothing. Doesn't that tell you that that switch, that change, that clothing that you wear to the mall, you would not wear it to the majlis or to the mosque? Doesn't that tell you that it's not appropriate? Because that's your heart telling you. You don't need anyone to tell you. You don't need anyone to tell you. Your heart tells you that the clothing that you wear to the mall or to the university, you can't wear it to the mosque. You just can't. That sense, that feeling is enough reason to tell you that that's not the real hijab. That's not the real hijab. Fashion hijab is not the real hijab. Even if it covers the entire body. But if it's all colorful and fashionable and it reveals the shape and the size of your body, this is not hijab, my dear friends. You see, let's go back to the point that we made first. The whole purpose, the whole reason behind hijab is to bring you attention or to take attention away from your looks. Obviously, it's to take attention away from your looks, not to bring you attention. I think that some women that wear fashion hijab, in fact, they might even look better with this hijab than if they don't wear hijab at all. They look better. It brings them more attention. It brings them more viewers. This is not hijab. Hijab is supposed to take people away from you. It's supposed to take attention away from you, not to bring you attention. You see, let me give you an example. If during Ramadan, if there's a pill, this is just theoretical. If there's a pill that you can take that will not make you feel hunger whatsoever, would you take that during Ramadan? I hope the answer is not yes. Some might, especially here when the day is 20 hours. But if you take a pill that does not let you be hungry, it takes away your appetite, this defeats the purpose of fasting, correct? Because during Ramadan, you're supposed to be hungry. You're supposed to feel hungry. There's some people that sleep during Ramadan, they sleep all day. They sleep 25 hours a day during Ramadan. When they wake up, they're not even hungry. They're not even hungry. It's not haram, don't get me wrong. It's not haram. In fact, it's even recommended to sleep during Ramadan. وَنَوْمُكُمْ فِيهِ ibadah. But you're also supposed to feel hungry. That's why I tell Muslims in Europe, I tell them you will be more rewarded than people that live, for example, in Australia. You know, in Australia, they fast for 9 hours or 10 hours. You in Europe, you fast for 20 hours. You think the reward is the same? No. The result is the same? No. The outcome is the same? Of course not. When you feel the hunger, that's the purpose. When you take a pill, that defeats the purpose of fasting. Let me give you another example. There's some people that go to Hajj, yet they stay at the most luxurious hotels and the most luxurious buildings. That defeats the purpose of Hajj. When you go to Hajj, you're supposed to sleep in a small tent, in a humble tent. You're supposed to feel like a poor person. How poor people are when you stay at the most luxurious places. It's not haram, but it defeats the purpose of Hajj. You see my point? We come to hijab. When you wear a fashion hijab, a hijab that's so colorful, clothing that's so fashionable, clothing that's so tight, it doesn't show skin, but this defeats the purpose of hijab. This defeats the purpose of hijab. This brings more attention to you. And the whole purpose of hijab is to take attention away from you. You see? صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Makeup. Makeup. I know this one's difficult. I know. Some sisters, they put on good hijab, perfect hijab. The scarf, the clothing, the abaya, it's all perfect. But there's just one problem. One tiny problem. And that's the makeup. My dear brothers and sisters, and I will mention why I emphasize on the brothers as well. When you're wearing hijab, but you also have makeup on, that also defeats the purpose. That also defeats the purpose, because you're also attracting attention. That's also a form of beautification, and the Quran says, وَلَا يُبْدِينَ زِينَتَهُنْ. They should not reveal their beautification, and this is a beautification. You see, my dear sisters, and I think I know what the problem is, even though sometimes women are quite difficult to understand. For men. And this is a compliment, this is not a bad thing. But it's an issue of self-esteem and self-confidence, right? Women want to look presentable. No woman wants to go out of the home, go out of the house, and look hideous. Correct? But this is the problem. You don't look hideous. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you beauty. I don't think that there's a single woman that is ugly. There's no such thing. Believe me. And as Americans say, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Beauty is relative. For one man, this woman could be incredibly beautiful, but another woman might not be beautiful. But for someone else, she could be very beautiful. Thus, there's no such thing as a woman that's not beautiful. They're all beautiful. Allah has given you beauty. Isn't this enough? I'll tell some ladies this. Isn't this enough? Why do you have to spend so much money and time and energy, stand behind the mirror, and you get your husband upset, he calls you for 10 hours, he's honking the horn, and he's calling you, and you're still behind the mirror putting on makeup. Or worse, there's some, she's driving and she's putting on makeup. You kill your time, you kill your money, you spend so much time and energy, and you're risking your life. You're putting on makeup while you're driving. Why? To impress two idiots. To impress a couple of men that respect you based on your looks. They don't respect you based on your achievements. Are they worth it? Are those men worth it? Some women say, I don't put on makeup for men. I put it on for women. This is a joke. Who cares about those women? Is that woman going to marry you? They try to justify it by saying, I don't do it for men, I do it for women. This is ridiculous. Thus, my dear sisters, you don't have to satisfy anyone. Have your self-confidence and self-esteem. You don't have to put on makeup just to satisfy others. And I tell some that if others do not appreciate your God-given beauty, they are not worth pleasing. They are not worth pleasing. if they don't appreciate your God-given beauty, you have to please them with your makeup, they're not worth pleasing. There are some women that put on makeup to get married. She says, I want to get married. I want to look presentable so that I will get proposals to get married. I tell such young women that if this young man has to see you with makeup in order to make up his mind to marry you, he's not worth marrying. He's not worth marrying, believe me. Because if he's basing his decision on makeup, he's not worth it. Thus have self-esteem, have self-confidence, and tonight I want my dear sisters to say no more to makeup. I know that's impossible, but it's worth a try. Let's see what happens, inshallah. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Some say, Sayyid, you're talking about hijab for the past hour. But how come we see some women that wear hijab, but their actions and behaviors say otherwise? We've seen many that wear hijab, but their behavior, their actions, their relationships, what they do at university, at college, on the street, is very shameful. And at the same time, there are some women that do not wear hijab, but their actions are perfect. I admit this. Yes, there's such a thing. There are women, they're hijabis, that wear hijab, but their actions are very bad. And there are some young women that don't wear hijab, yet their actions are good. Their behaviors are good. They have absolutely no relationships whatsoever. Does this mean that hijab has no effect? Does this mean that we should eradicate hijab altogether? Of course not. Of course not. Let me give you an example. Seat belts. In every car, there's a seat belt. How many times do we see a person that was wearing his seat belt, yet got in a car accident and got injured, correct? And sometimes you see a person that wasn't wearing a seat belt and he never gets into a car accident. Or if he gets into a car accident, he doesn't get injured and he's not even wearing his seat belt. Does this mean that we should take out seat belts from every car? Because this person that was wearing a seatbelt, he got injured, and the person that was not wearing a seatbelt, he didn't get injured. Does this mean that we should take out seatbelts? No. This was a coincidence. This was a coincidence. The young ladies, my dear sisters, those that wear hijab, but their actions and behaviors say otherwise. You know why? Two reasons. Number one, maybe some of them are forced to wear hijab. Some of them are forced. Because her father forces her. She doesn't want to wear hijab. She's doing it because she's forced. Some are not afraid of she's not afraid of her father. She's afraid of her brother. Some are afraid of the community. Some are afraid of what people might think, but she doesn't like hijab. See, she's not convinced. She's wearing hijab because she's forced. Obviously, her actions will be different. Others wear hijab, but they don't know the meaning of hijab. Hijab is honor. Hijab is respect. Hijab is modesty. Hijab is supposed, yes, it's physically worn, but it's also supposed to affect you spiritually, emotionally. It's supposed to affect you physically. Some don't know this. That is why you will see some women that wear hijab, but their actions say otherwise. And finally, we come to the men. Brothers, fathers, husbands, you also have a role. You also have a role. I tell some brothers that how can you look at your sister? She dresses provocatively without hijab. Her entire body is showing, almost naked, half naked, with so much makeup. You look at her, leave the house, and you don't say anything? What sort of brother are you? Previously, our men, they had something called ghira. Or in Farsi, they call it ghairat. Correct? Today, it seems like our men don't have ghira anymore. They don't have ghairat anymore. He sees his wife leaving the house dressed so provocatively, and he knows that tens of men, hundreds of men will be checking her out. He doesn't care. He doesn't care. In fact, he's even proud of her. He'll even take a picture of her and post it. Or a father looks at his daughter, she's dressed so provocatively, he doesn't care. This is half of the reason. Half of the reason why hijab is being taken seriously, my dear friends. And in our communities, we're facing a problem with hijab is men. Men are half of the problem. Because fathers, brothers, husbands, they're not carrying out their duties. They're not teaching their women about hijab. They're not telling their women about hijab. We have a problem. We have a problem. And you know what's another problem? Another problem is a man who covers his wife, he covers his sister, but he looks at other men's wives. He covers his own sister, he makes sure that his sister leaves the house fully covered, but he looks at other women's sisters, other men's sisters. This is wrong as well. You covered your sister, but it's okay for you to look at other men's sisters? You cover your wife, but it's okay for you to look at other men's wives? This is a double standard. This is a hypocrisy. Let's learn from the Ahlul Bayt, my dear friends. The Ahlul Bayt, their hijab. You know why when we commemorate Ashura, when we commemorate the martyrdom of Imam Hossein, you know what was the worst tragedy? Imam Zain al-Abidin was asked. They asked him from Ashura, what was the worst tragedy? Was it the killing of your father? He said no. Was it the killing of Abu al-Fadl Abbas? He said no. He said, was it the slaying of 6-month-old Abdullah? He said no. You know, by the way, Imam Hussein had 2 infants on Ashura. 2, not 1. Most people think that Imam Hussein had just 1 infant, Abdullah. Yes, Abdullah was a 6-month-old infant that was killed on Ashura. Imam Hussein had another infant that was born on Ashura in Karbala that was also killed. But speakers and reciters, they don't mention him. They rarely mention him. He was asked, which one? Which of these tragedies was the greatest? He said, you know which one? Ash-Sham, Damascus. Why? Because my aunt Zainab and our woman entered in the mansion of Yazid and their faces were exposed. Our women were exposed. These were the Ahlul Bayt. Their greatest tragedy upon them is that their aunt Zainab was exposed. Men would be able to see her, not her hair, but her face. This was their greatest tragedy. When we attend these majalis, let's learn. Let's not just hear these words and cry and go home and that's it. Let's learn. Sayyidah Zainab alayhi salam, when she was in Medina, she would come to the shrine of her grandfather Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. When Rasulullah passed away, the Ahlul Bayt, they would come to his grave and they mourn and they sit and cry. Everyone would come during the day, as Sayyidah Zainab would come during the night, only at night. Why at night? Because there's no men. All the men would be sleeping. You see what a great tragedy it was for Sayyidah Zainab? A woman that no man had seen. They wouldn't even see her shadow. She would come and visit her grandfather Rasulullah at night, so men don't see her. Now all of a sudden Zainab is in front of all of the men. Zainab is in front of all of the men. Days like this, towards the end of Safar, the caravan of Imam Hussein came back to Medina. They left Karbala after Arba'een. And they came towards Medina, the city of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi, the shrine of Rasulullah. Sayyidah Zainab would say, how can I come back to Medina and my brother is not with me? Al-Abbas is not with me. Hussein is not with me. What am I going to say to the people that ask me about your brothers? How can I go back home and I see the house of my brother empty? How can I go back and my brother's not there? They came back into the city. Bishr ibn Hadlam began to recite, calling the people of Medina, oh people, come out. The caravan of Imam Zain al-Abidin and Zainab has come back. Come and greet them. يا أهل يثرب لا مقام لكم بها يا أهل يثرب لا مقام لكم بها قتل الحسين فدمعي مدرار الجسم منهم مضرج في كربلاء والرأس منه على القناة ibn Hazm says, we entered Medina. The women, the children came back to Medina. Sayyidah Zainab came to the shrine of Rasulullah, my grandfather, Ya Rasulullah. When I left the city, my brother Hossein was with me. My brother Abbas was with me. My grandfather, Ya Rasulullah, do you know what your nation did to your grandson Hussein? Ya Rasulullah, they left him in the plain of Karbala. Ya Rasulullah, they beheaded your son Hussein. They stripped him from his armor. They trampled his body with their horses. Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein. Bishr ibn Hazm says that as I was standing, I saw a woman approach me. A woman with a face glowing with light. I noticed her, she was al-Banin. She came and she said, Ya Bishr, inform me of my son Hussein. I said, Subhanallah, this woman has lost 4 of her sons in Ashura, but she asked about Hussein. He said, Ya al-Banin, I offer my condolences on your son Abdullah. She said, may he be a sacrifice for Hussein. And tell me about my son Hussein. He said, my condolences on your son Uthman, on your son Ja'far. She said, may they be a sacrifice for my son Hussein. Inform me about Hussein. He said, my condolences on your son Abul Fadl al-Abbas. She told him, Ya Bishr, you are breaking my heart. Tell me about my son Hussein. He said, عظم الله لك الأجر بولدك الحسين. My condolences on your son Hussein. al-Banin fell to the ground. She began to shout, Wa walada wa Husayna. La ya tad'uwanni wayki al-Banin. تذكريني